Can everyone hear me? Hello.
Dr. Azeeza, Yvette. I'm going to wait for the others to filter in through here. Dina, okay. Welcome everybody to Your Cap Table is Not a Craps Table. We're just waiting for one of our other panelists to get here, and also the diagram that we're going to be using. But let's not waste any time here. I'd love to start off with some intros. Everybody knows who I am, so we don't need to do that. But I'm going to turn to Dr. Azeeza, and then we'll go down the line, and Yvette will be moderating our panel today as well. Great to have you with us, all of us. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and wonderful to be on the panel with all these amazing human beings. And I am so happy that we are able to be part of this very important conversation. I just loved what Yvette and everybody was discussing on back channel. I'm excited to be on this space. I'm from Singapore, so that's like 12:40 a.m. here. And it's just phenomenal how all of us across the world can connect, and I can't miss a chance of not connecting with amazing people. So, and can I just share with you about my organization? We are a Go Global Business School. It's a Go Global Accelerator, first of its kind from Singapore, and we work on conscious leadership and for trainers, coaches, mentors coming together in one global ecosystem. And that's it for me. Looking forward. Is that Dina?
I don't know. This is not Clubhouse, you guys. It's not as comfortable for me. I'm like, what do I do?
This is not Club. Wait.
No, I see your face. See if it's like, give me a second. No, I'm joking. For those, no. For those
exactly.
I've actually seen Dr. Azeeza before, so this is not our first call. So, but Yvette, we get to meet. Very nice to meet you like this. I've seen you connect to me on LinkedIn, so I'll make sure to connect back and see what we can do. But anyway, for those who don't know me, I am Dina. I am an investor based out of Jordan. I co-founded Seven Circles. It's an investments firm and a consultancy. We operate in 10 plus countries. We also have a social enterprise that's very big on impact. What else do you want me to talk about? Is it just a little bit about me? Mother of two, exhausted mother of two, like every other parent on this planet. Yes, that's it. 2 boys.
I think that's great. Now we'll go to Yvette, and then I have found the diagram as well. So when we need to use the diagrams, I will just share my screen.
Okay, sounds great. So my name is Yvette Lim. I'm also based in Singapore, although I have not met Azeeza in person. And I am the founder of Quick Look, which is an advisory company which helps early stage entrepreneurs as well as potential investors understand the cash flows and risks associated with new business ideas. So our motto is knowledge is empowerment. So that's my quick intro.
Lovely.
It definitely is. So yes, that's a great one.
Okay then, sure. All right, we got Chris in the audience. We got Gerald Shapiro. Excellent. So yeah, Yvette, if you want to start us off here with what we're going to be discussing here today with your cap tables on a craps table, then we can just get into the deeper discussion, and we can use that diagram as well.
So I think today's a very exciting discussion as well as a big topic. But I think it can really help to give a heads up to early stage founders on managing their equity and their cap table to avoid challenges in the future. So if we can flash up the diagram, there's a few key areas that
absolutely
that we simplified things to.
Yeah, just gonna get that set up here. Give me 1 second here. Just clearing out some stuff on my side. And we're gonna, okay, great.
So maybe just to give some key highlights and messages
thank you so much.
for the audience to think about. So it's one of the key things is it's basically very important to understand the long-term implications of your equity decisions. So often you're setting the scene very early on with founding partners, and those decisions that you make around the equity split will affect your whole journey and development of your business and your company. And generally, fundraising comes at an expense of control and room to maneuver later on. So it's a bit of a balancing act. And then also the last key message is that, it's really, really important to understand the contractual terms and to understand the maths of your dilution as you progress and as you grow and scale and you have more and more investors on board. So what I would like to do is I would like to sort of kick off the discussion with sort of like the first step, which is around founding partners. So, you've got a great idea, you've got some founding partners. How do you split co-founder equity? Do you say, hey, there's 3 of us, let's split it all equally? Or, what value are people bringing to the table? So, Dina, maybe you can share some of your experiences on, the very first step, which is, splitting co-founder equity.
Sure. As a personal experience or as an investor when I look at companies?
Maybe as a personal experience to start off with, because I think that's really, really valuable. There'll be a lot of founders out there. And then on the flip side, as an investor.
Sure. So Brian just joined. Do we say hi to him or do we completely ignore him? And
Oh, nice.
What's the plan, Brian? What do we do? Yeah. Do I answer or do we say hi to Brian first?
Hi guys. Sorry, I was on the other stage. I didn't know what was going on.
That's okay. So we're building the plane as we fly it, as always.
Clubhouse. I got confused too.
No problem.
So Brian, do you want to make a small intro before I jump in and respond to her question about co-founders and my personal experience with them? Just do you want to do a quick intro first? Okay.
Yeah, of course. Hi guys, my name is Brian. I'm the founder of a prop tech company called Simply. Oh crap, hold on one second. I'm also an aspiring VC. I have a new angel syndicate that I'm spinning up called Blizzard as well. So, it's me.
Great.
Awesome.
Okay. So to respond back to you, thank you for your question. My co-founder and I own a few companies, not just one. Majority of them are 50-50%. Sometimes I own 70, sometimes he owns 30, but we also co-own other entities too. I started, this is not my first company, it's my 7th. So I've had different kind of relationships with different co-founders across the stages, but usually I was never a solo entrepreneur. I always had somebody with me. I don't know what it means like to have something totally by myself. Maybe one day I'll have the courage, I don't know. But that's my personal experience. To go back to your response on, the question that you asked about the entrepreneurs or companies that we look at. So there's always a reason to why somebody brings in something to the table. So co-founders, your example was there are 3 co-founders. Should it all be shared equally? I'm not too sure that's how we usually see companies work. There's usually, it doesn't just because the 3 of them started at the same time doesn't mean that each one is bringing in the same thing to the table. So maybe one wants to be a silent partner, maybe just wants to provide cash. Others is a tech partner, for example. So I feel like each case, we need to look at the variables there. We need to look at the people there and look at it. Ultimately, whether it is one founder, multiple founders or anything else, definitely we have to look at the case by case and make sure that each one is contributing something to the company, or else as investors we're not really interested in people who just call themselves co-founders but don't really add anything to the conversation. Does that help, Yvette? Is that what you're looking for? Okay, because I'm not really sure of my audience. I'm like, I don't know, how deep do I go?
It can go very, very deep, and I think the key takeaway here is that, when you are setting up your company, as you say, it's very important to have a discussion around what founders are bringing to the table. It's not going to be a 50-50 split if there's two people, or equally between three. It really needs to have a very honest discussion around, what are you bringing to the table in terms of financially, in terms of experience, and in terms of skills. And then I think an important factor will be to have a partnership agreement, which will cover things such as, if somebody wants to exit, is there any preferential, buyback option for the others, or, how the pricing might work. Those are very important things, which I think a lot of early stage founders don't necessarily put in place. And then they get down the road a couple of years, and then there's a dispute.
No, you mean the founders agreement? Yes, I agree.
Yes.
Definitely. That's what we call it. I don't know if you call it the partnerships agreement, or is it I think the founders agreement collectively, right? Maybe. Anyway, but Yvette, I also want to talk about long term. I don't think we always think about that too. Like, okay, today, for example, this is my role, but what will my role be in 3 years, in 5 years, in 10 years? And I feel like not enough entrepreneurs think about the long term relationship that they're going to have with the team, and they may not like each other in 6 months. And we've seen that a lot in entrepreneurs, especially early stage ones. So things to think about, like, okay, what will happen if I wanted to be out in 5 years? What does that mean in terms of my equity, my shares, and so forth? So, yeah.
Indeed.
So
Indeed. Yeah. And I think after the initial founding of the company, then, it gets into sort of like this second box around, what happens when you have additional partners that come along, or how do you recognize and incentivize key employees, or board members, or advisors. So maybe, Brian, you can share some of your thoughts and your experience in this.
Yeah, if they're not there day one, they are not a partner. They can be a significant shareholder. They could earn a ton of RSUs and then get a bunch of option credits. I mean, that's just gold handcuffing somebody. What that initial split is, there's a couple of just fundamental truths. It should not be 50-50, because guess what? Then no one can actually make a decision. My partner and I, for instance, are 60-40. The reality is that just because of how the equity gets split, it doesn't necessarily mean that is going to be the level of work that is then divided up, which is also another key thing. In my current company, I've probably done 90% of the work up till now. And now that we are rapidly growing, my partner we are very much doing 50-50. But that's 2.5 years into a company for that balance to happen. And that's the reality. 50, whatever your split is, it doesn't mean that is how it's always going to be divided. It's kind of like a marriage. There are days where my wife does 90% of the work, and there's days where I do a solid 25%. Do the math out on that. I'm never doing more than she is. She is a rock star. But so when you start to think about this thing, look, until you have a priced equity round, there's no reason to go through the exercise of building an option. Number one, it's expensive, it's messy, and it forces, at that point, you're carrying dilution that none of your investors are if you've raised via SAFE. Second part of that is, so that means everyone's coming in on RSUs. Second part, you never issue percentage ownership, you issue number of shares. The reason why is percentage ownership is completely, flexible. It's going to change every time you redo that. And so if I issue somebody, for instance, our total issued shares right now is like 8 million shares out of, I think, 16,000 authorized, something like that. So right now, if I issue somebody roughly 80,000 shares, that's around 1% of the company. But that has nothing to do with when we do our A round, how that's going to end up playing out. Doesn't mean they don't get 80,000 shares. It's the last and the third thing. You do not put a dollar amount on those shares until you have a 409A and you actually have a war-priced round. These are mistakes that I see all the time. Now, what do you give somebody? Your first founding engineer, let's say they come on 2 to 3 months in. They're not your CTO, they're your first founding engineer. That person should probably be getting between 1% and 5% of the company. Mm-hmm. Your first marketing hire, doesn't matter who they are, should probably be getting between 1/8 and 0.5% of the company. Those are the highest grants you're ever going to give out to somebody, because they are the ones that are there not day one, but they're basically day two. Salespeople don't get the same grant levels as your marketing and especially your engineering people. The reason why is very simple. Salespeople are super replaceable. A great engineer is a lot harder to find than just another salesperson. So these are, the mistakes that I've seen a lot of people make over time is that they're either way too frugal about their shares or they are way too generous. And finding that balance and knowing when those things should be given and how they should be, that's why you have attorneys that have deep experience in managing these kinds of things. My attorney, I'm a tiny fly in his portfolio of people at MoFo. Before that, we were with Perkins Coie. The reason why you pay $1,000 an hour to your attorney and you get very good at knowing how to get all the information prior to them actually on the phone with you is specifically doing, they can guide you on these things. What should this person get? What should that person get? It doesn't mean
I think vesting schedules are very important as well, Brian.
Sorry, yeah, I agreed. I mean that's just a de facto. Everybody should be on a 4-year vest with a 1-year cliff, and then you can determine if you want to do it monthly, quarterly, or semi-annually after that. And that's everyone, including myself. I'm on a vesting schedule. Every one of my portcos, the first thing, are you on a vesting schedule? Nope. Then I'm not writing you a check. And that's happening because to be blunt, people leave companies, even founders leave companies. And if we can't claw back the equity that you have not yet vested, that's great. The other thing to be aware of is it's not that uncommon to have your vesting schedule just partially reset in later rounds. If you're 100% vested at your B round, there's not as much incentive for you to stick around. So it's not uncommon to have that request. Not everything, but part of it. But those are my thoughts on it. I'll end there.
Great sharing. Thank you so much for that, Brian. Azeeza, maybe you can give us some of your experience and some tips to the audience around dilution. So, maybe seed round, then leading to Series A. What are some of the key things that founders should keep in mind?
Okay, so first thing first, that's a very important milestone that we need to set, like what both of them have shared, Dina and Brian as well. When you set your first round of shares to be diluted, before that, you already have your co-founders and founders and whoever in the first group, right? I always look at and advise them. And in fact, many of these companies that I consult with, and even in our own company, the first thing first is what is it that individually the shareholding partners are looking for in the company in return. So is it something that they are excited about? If it's a 3 years, 5 years roadmap, and how are they going to look at it in long term, as in what our friends have said. So alignment in your heart and congruent to your heart that you are happy you're going to be achieving something like that in your company. And individually, be it me and I have a lot of shareholders in my company, as we have done a couple of rounds of share dilution as well. At the same time, every time we bring in more shareholders, we know that the share expansion happens. It's not based on percentage, it's based on shares issued. And how many rounds you're going to go in, and most importantly, what is the projected exit plan that you have? That will give a clarity individually, because many a time people are like, okay, let me just try it out. Let me just jump right in and see how it goes, and then we'll take it a flow. So share dilution is supposed to be agreed upon at the early stage. Like, for example, right now, the whole team already know in my company that we would have already diluted maybe up to 60% of the company by the time we go for listing, and everybody's agreeable that this is the direction we'll be taking. And another company that we are consulting is going to be selling off their company. So when I did the work with them, and it was so interesting because it's a party of three, and the way that they have looked at their shares and what they're expecting out of it was so not right. So one of them felt completely okay with the amount that they're going to get at the end of 5 years. One was way too less, and the one was way too more. And so this is like, you know, the way that they are looking at their own clarity and then coming in alignment to what is actually going to be available. Even if it's a projection, it is very, very important for us to be clear. And I have to say this, right? We are dealing with people. So when we're doing any kind of share dilution, you want to know how to deal with people and how they show up, which is like what Brian mentioned, you know, what happens if they don't do the work, and then how's the vesting schedule works. And that's a very, very important one in my thought as well. So I'm just going to stop there and maybe let others chime in as well.
If I can just hop in on that. I mean, I think, Azeeza, I hear you. I would counter with, fundamentally, if they're not me or my co-founder or on my board, they have no say in the direction of the company. And I know that sounds harsh, but I don't care about their input. I'll take their input. There's no seat at the table there. And dilution is a fact of raising capital. Now, the other fact is that the vast majority, 99.95% of the people that are listening today will never raise a dime of outside capital. That is a fact. That is what get. And if you're a woman, and if you're a woman of color, and if you're of color, or you are LGBTQ+, all of those numbers go down. So there's two things to look at here. One, dilution, it doesn't become a factor if you're not raising capital. So if you don't want to get diluted, don't raise capital, build a business, bootstrap. And there are a lot of companies that have done very, very well that way and have become massive.
Mm-hmm.
Great
point, Brian.
Yes.
The second part, because I have to hop to a call here in a second. The second part to that is it's really important to recognize that dilution is not a bad thing as long as you don't overly dilute. Will I be diluted 60%? Yeah, probably around, I think if I were to look at it, probably around my C round, if we go that far. Yes. But I also don't have control over when I exit the company.
Yes.
I have to build a company that I can run forever. If we have an exit opportunity, that's great. And that is a decision that is going to be evaluated and made at that time. But knowing that in a given funding round, I'm not giving up more than between 5 and 20% of, that is the maximum dilution for the shareholders, the existing shareholders, that's fine. It also is why early on, you shouldn't be doing priced rounds. You should be raising, if you're in the US, on a safe, convertible notes in other places. There's various versions of this stuff because you don't know the value of the company, which means you don't know what the shares are worth, which means, and you can always issue more, you can always authorize more shares. It's a little paperwork, but you can do that, and you can always rebalance that, or you can split the shares, or this, that, the other. There's fungibility in how those shares can be managed. It's truly the most important to recognize you are there to build a business first. There are going to be shares in that business. Those are the only two fundamental truths, or three. There's one more. Someone's going to own them. Beyond that, it's pretty much you got to roll with it as it comes at you. So.
Sounds good. And how about you, Dina? Do you have any key words of wisdom or advice for early stage founders in terms of the fundraising, the dilution, things to keep in mind?
Sure, but before I do, I just want to say that this is a fascinating platform. It's my first time on it. So I was able to finally see who was actually listening to us. Now, Azeeza, were you able to? It's amazing. So hello to all those listening. I'm sorry I didn't know who you were before, but nice to see many founders with us, many investors, all of you, hello. So to respond back, I mean, Azeeza mentioned quite a lot on dilution, and so did I'm happy to jump in, but we do have only 3 minutes and a half left. So maybe, and I know we have a series of questions. Would you like to move into another question, or would you like to, how would you like us to go on with the last 4 minutes, Yvette? And I'm happy if you want, but you tell me.
I think basically if you can just share your key experience. I mean, you've been on the founder side, you've been on the investor side, were there any key pitfalls?
Sure.
And anything that you think that the audience really would get value from or insight from at this stage?
Sure. So I lived in San Francisco for 10 years, and I'm currently in Jordan in the Middle East. And in the States, they overvalue everything. It was amazing to me. Like, how comes an entrepreneur who values himself or herself at $20 million? In Jordan, it'll be like, it is a multiple exited entrepreneur and still valuing themselves much less. So it's really fascinating to me. But I also learned from American investors is that if you dilute yourself so quickly early on, we are not interested as investors to walk in when you're valued at 50 million, 100 million and above. So my advice is check in with every advisor you can globally, internationally. If you want to one day become a billion-dollar company, a unicorn, then my God, you need to know exactly that that's what you want from day one, and make sure you don't give enough of your equity early on, or you will never get there. And with that, I'm done, Yvette.
Great, great. Any last words from you, Azeeza?
Yes, I think there was someone asking about course correcting if any early any make if you make early mistakes. I think I would like to answer that as well, because yeah, that's an expensive one. Like what Dina said, you know, how clear are you when you set the foot in, and in the event a mistake is done, is how fast you can correct, which is so important. And it's very important to own up. And if, let's say, you have to go into negotiation to correct the mistakes, and in this instance, I'm not exactly sure what is the mistake, but talking about share dilution and everything, sometimes it's the word that you give. So once given, then you want to hold to yourself with it and work out a way that you create a powerful, authentic, step moving forward to ensure that you are keeping to your word. Because I just give you an example of my own company. In my early first company that I incorporated was a private limited company where I have a group of shareholders. And when my husband passed on and I had to move on to and then we restructured the whole company. And then the public limited company that's now set up, we brought in all our previous shareholders into this company as well, with honoring them for what they have contributed in the first company. If otherwise, I could have written off and say it's done, and where many of these Singapore companies do. And I'm sure you've heard of that, business failure, finish, and they move on. But here we brought them in and we honored the shares that was already offered. So I feel that it's important to recognize, and also this will speak volumes of your business, your commitment, and your steps moving forward. So that's my take on this. And I really, really want to tell people that the importance of knowing, because it's about money. We're talking about, equity and shares. And we always talk about this, it's the heart alignment. Your heart will shift when it comes to money. So your ability to see for yourself and come into money consciousness, that whatever happens, you will be setting your mark on what you want and go for it. And if it becomes more, share it with everybody. If it's less, be willing to take it as your own risk. So in this way, I think the whole business ecosystem will thrive amazingly well. And because I come from a conscious capitalism space, so I would like to tell you that the more the business dilution and people share your company, the right people, and that is a whole game around it, I think that's a big vision that you can hold together as a community to grow as one. Yeah, that's where I am right now. So I'm very blessed and grateful. Thank you so much.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Dina. Thank you, Yvette.
Always an honor. And Yvette, thank you for moderating.
Indeed. So I think we leave on a note of, be true to yourself and have honesty and integrity in how you deal with yourself, your partners, your employees, and your investors.
That's right.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. Thank you, everyone, for your contribution today.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Look, it was wonderful being in this space, and all the friends who've been watching as well.
Indeed. Great. Okay.
So is it like we just go off or what?
I think so.
Which?
I think we should take a picture.
Yes. I'm not sure how to take a picture though. So
Just take a screenshot.
Okay, fantastic, wonderful. Thank you everyone for joining us. And I think if you have some more questions, please feel free to raise them in the Prepare for VC community. Steve and the guys are excellent, and somebody will definitely give you some advice and some help if you don't know what to do. So please just ask your questions into the community, and have a good evening.
Yes, thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.